Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Finally got a warm day here in Colorado to bring the motorcycle out in the sunlight and give you a better look at the motorcycle. So I'll make sure to put some pictures at the very end of the video. If you want to be able to fast forward, I'm going to do just a slow video with some still pictures probably towards the end. So if that's what you're looking for, go ahead and fast forward to the end. But what this graphics install was supposed to accomplish, taking the video, is just to show you the process of applying these and some barriers I ran into, and ultimately how I found that doing a wet application with an application fluid was superior to doing the dry application. So if you fast forward in the video, I'll talk about the types of application fluids I've used and some of the tools and methods that I used as I've worked my way through the motorcycle. So you can find those in the video. And also later in the video, I'll show one side of the motorcycle with the graphics applied, and then I'll show the other side untouched. So factory stickers on the bike. And if you may have noticed that, and I'll discuss this a little bit later, I didn't decide to go ahead and wrap the decals over the top of the tank. I really wanted to keep some solid red colors in there, and I didn't want to overdo it. So with the red tank and the red skid plate and the red beak, I've got a lot of solid colors here that I really wanted to keep in place just to make sure the bike didn't start to look too busy. So anyway, this is the finished product. Mosso di Serpente is nice and personalized now. Please feel free to drop any questions into the comments. Please remember that this is not my day job, and I'm not a professional reviewer or installer, just trying to help out the fellow Aprilia Tuareg community. So cheers from Colorado. All right, so before I can get started with taking these graphics off, I'm going to have to take off these engine guards here. That'd be entirely too difficult to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so I've started the process of getting my bike prepped to put the decals down the side of the motorcycle. And I've already performed some of this work on the front fender and towards the rear of the motorcycle, as you can see here on this side cover and some of these smaller pieces, even this tail piece back here. So today I'll be moving on to some of the more difficult parts of the motorcycle, which includes the whole side of the gas tank, the airbox lid, then some of these trim pieces, as well as the radiator shrouds up here. So I'll be removing these Tuareg and the big Aprilia decals. They are very, very thin decals. However, in the event that I would ever want to take these decals off, the likelihood that these decals underneath would be salvageable is, I believe, would be pretty low. And also these are easily replaceable by reordering them through Aprilia. But most of all, even just that slight ridge can create a place where it's really difficult to get a bubble out on the decal. And I also would actually be able to probably make out the indentation of the A and this Tuareg decal. So I'm going to go ahead and get those off. That's going to take a light amount of heat. Now it's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 14 degrees Celsius inside my garage during the wintertime, and it is full-on wintertime here in Colorado. So down below I've got a space heater on the side of my motorcycle. I'm just trying to warm up the plastics a little bit and get them a little bit more prepped. Also, I have the decals inside my house where they're sitting at about 22 degrees Celsius, somewhere around 73 degrees Fahrenheit, in order to make sure that I've got the surface that I'm putting it onto, as well as the decals, at approximately the same temperature. I don't want one to be particularly cold, and I don't want the decals, not only do I want them to be warm for the application process to make them more malleable, but I want the surface to be warmed up at the same temperature too, so they'll cool down together at the same time. So it's good to make sure that you are thoroughly prepped, not just for the surface in terms of dirt and grime, but also for the temperature at which you're going to be applying the decals. So for the preparation of the surface today, I'm going to use a Mother's CMX surface prep. And this is supposed to remove all waxes, oils, polishing residue, and fillers to promote a optimal bond for lasting ceramic protection. So this was originally designed with the intention of removing all the oils and residues off in order to put a ceramic coating on a painted surface. But also it has a lot of different applications, and this one will work particularly well to make sure I got all the oil and residue off the motorcycle before applying those decals. Additionally, I have some rapid tack cleaner and application fluid. Now I have a really small bottle of this. These decals were meant to be installed without any use of fluid, but to my understanding, there isn't anything harmful about using this particular fluid in order to spray and be able to move around some decals, and it'll help me fight some of those air bubbles off in a particularly difficult sections of the motorcycle. So I'll try to do it without using the application fluid, but for some of the more difficult decals, I might be using this fluid just to help me fight the air bubbles. It's a lot easier to squeegee out water than it is to squeegee out air. So I have this. Now for removing the decals, I'm going to use a light amount of heat. I don't want to damage the plastic. This is a Wagner heat gun, and on high it will melt a hole straight through the top, through the decal. It'll make them bubble, and if I'm bubbling the decal on top, that's actually probably a bad sign for the plastic underneath. It's getting too warm. So I'm going to use a low amount of heat and going to try to tackle this multiple times and reheating it as necessary, but I'll be very careful about how much heat I'm actually applying at any time to one part of the surface, and you'll see me actually using the heat gun and moving it over a more general area versus just focusing on one spot. Focusing on one spot usually is a very bad thing. So here we go. Okay, so what I've done here, starting out on this piece on the lower gas tank, is I've gone through and I always start out a little bit easy and work my way up in difficulty. So on this piece, this is a pretty simple piece. There's no complex corners and curvatures to go around on the gas tank. So the big thing is you just want to sit there and you want to move it around for a while until you actually find where it actually belongs. Sometimes it can be kind of hard looking from the photo and saying, oh yeah, well, wow, there's actually a curve right here which perfectly matches the curve up here on the top. So therefore, this piece may be one of my indicators for where the entire decal belongs. So I'll sit there and I'll float around the piece for a while until I find the exact spot. I'll tape it down the sides and with just two strips of automotive type masking tape. And then I'll peel back one of the corners here, and I'll either use a knife or, in my case, I have a cutting tool that has a small razor blade in it. So I'll just slice off the tape, and then I'll adhere the corner up. So now I've got this top corner stuck. I'll pull this tape off, and then I'll take the backing, and I'll start to slowly peel it down. And I'm probably going to favor the top edge here because I've got a nice straight line. And I'll take that top edge and I'll apply it all the way down across the top, then slowly remove the backing from the bottom and then push down and making sure I'm keeping bubbles out as I go along and working my way down here. So there's two sides to this. There's a hard plastic side and there's a felt side right here. I'm going to use that felt side that doesn't scratch it. You can also, if you want to, you can wet this down. In my case, I'm actually going to use that application fluid. I'm just going to wipe it down just to give it a little bit less drag on the decal as I squeegee it down. Now, it's also worth noting that as I'm moving my way down this decal, by keeping the backing towards this back section, if at any point I don't like an air bubble or anything that's popped up here, I don't like the alignment against the top edge, what I can do is, since I've got this backing on here, this is a really high quality decal and it's pretty thick, so I should be able to slowly peel it back upwards and I'd be able to squeeze out any pieces. Now, I'm going to do all the sections that are flat first. Now, there is a little bit of a curve down towards the bottom of the tank. I'm going to do the flat portion up here first, and then I'm going to come through here and I'm going to do the next curve. So I'm doing one curve at a time. If I make my way and I push this curved edge over, then it's going to make it difficult to apply the rest of the top down. All right, so this piece is done. I'm working my way up in complexity. Um, these big pieces also are going to be, they've got quite a few more complex curves around them. So the next easiest piece that I probably have here to install is this piece that goes just right here behind the radiator shroud. So I've already done one of these pieces, actually a few of them, that have this small, what you want to call like a 3-blade propeller or 3 tipped diamond pattern here through this entire piece. And what I find is that on these that they adhere just fine. It does require a little bit more heat and a little bit more persuasion. Because this has a lot more going on this side in terms of cuts, I'm going to start out by lining everything up, taping it. I'm going to start out from when I have my cut, I'm going to stick it to this side first, and then I'm going to work my way into the more difficult areas of the decal. Okay, so that went on surprisingly smooth, actually. So there's a couple places where I have a couple like pretty hard bends through here. And so I want to make sure I'm taking my lubricated felt piece. I'm laying it down primarily with this black felt piece, which I've just sprayed down with that applicator fluid just to give me a nice smooth glide. But then once I hit those more tighter, complex crevices, to flip over and use that hard side of that spatula to essentially get into those crevices and make sure I'm just applying some more direct pressure all the way down into the crevice of those. And lastly, just to finish it up, as I said, it does have that kind of 3-bladed propeller or diamond pattern behind it. So in order to get it to lay down really nice and tight against that pattern, I'm going to have to apply heat across the entire thing until I start to see that pattern actually come out from below the decal itself. So on for this piece, I'm going to find that the easiest place to start out on this one is going to be on this top triangle, this bottom triangle. So I'm going to actually cut a piece off of here and get that adhered first. I'm going to do top triangle, bottom triangle, and then I'm going to start working the pieces with the cuts over the front and the bottom here. So okay, so I only ended up with one very small bubble, the entire thing that's right about here in the A. I mean, it's almost so small it's hard to detect. Now, these decals are so thick that they are nearly um, airtight. So most of this, any kind of air that you have trapped behind here, it's not going to escape on its own. So unfortunately, what you're going to have to do is kind of do a divide and conquer thing. Now, a lot of these will have like these small tools like this one that you can divide a bubble in half, and then you can squish it with your finger like on both sides. So divide the bubble in two, like so, and then squeegee it outward. But if that doesn't work for some reason, these generally don't go completely away on their own, unfortunately. So I'm going to try to cut it four ways, basically, if you want to think about it that. I'm not actually cutting through the decal, but I'm just basically chopping the bubble into four sections by applying pressure on it. And then I'm going to use my finger and stamp it down. And that seems to be working. Another way that you could potentially get these air bubbles out, if you have some particularly large ones, is to use the heat gun, not too much heat, but some heat, and to come through here and actually put, and you can, in most countries at least, I think, and definitely in the United States, you can go get really small insulin needles. That's one technique I saw that worked particularly well, and I used it to take a bubble out on my fender, was to heat it up and then to put that really small diameter insulin needle into the bubble, suck the air out because the syringe was all the way, the plunger was all the way down, to suck out the air, and then that allowed me to then press the bubble down, and it adhered quite nicely, and it left a mark that was so small in the decal that you would never notice it. If you wanted to take one step on above that, the big thing is that once you start blemishing a decal like this and actually grabbing it with the needle or whatever, you're inviting a place for dirt and other foreign debris to come in and to find a home and create a bigger bubble later in your decal. So you got to be really careful about how big of a hole you potentially put in the decal to remove that air, because you could potentially end up making it worse eventually if it's quite big enough. All right, guys, I just finished up the upper tank piece here. This proved to be a lot more difficult than originally planned. In fact, this may even be prove to be more difficult than the airbox lid. This curve that comes around the side here, it's really hard to see, but I mean, this has some pretty beautiful curves on this gas tank, and they can be very difficult to tame. So what I found as I was going through here is that I had, even after I'd lined it up, I started on this piece and I had it taped down, is that I worked my way across, but as I made my way over the lip and towards the edge, I kept finding big creases here. So, so as I worked my way back, I actually started to use this Rapid Tack cleaner and application fluid. And I don't know, I used to professionally install clear bras and stuff like that onto vehicles. I've installed decals previously, so I do have some minor professional experience installing something like this. However, it has been some time. I would no longer consider myself a professional, but without this fluid, I don't think I could have made this application as smooth as I did. In fact, I'd venture to guess that I probably couldn't get this done properly without putting huge air bubbles in it. So this application fluid really allowed me to press it slowly over the edge. Now, this took a lot of continuous heat for me to get it to mold around. The tops of the edges were all rippled as I went around the edges, but as I continued to apply low heat, that application fluid just gradually dried out, and then all the corners would stick. And at the same time, it allowed me to apply that heat, and that vinyl decal just really smoothly bent around those curves. So there's a couple cases where I found some air bubbles, and the application fluid also allowed me to pull that up and to reapply it, whereas I think it would have been more difficult without the application fluid. So big endorsement for Rapid Tack application fluid, which is proving to be extremely useful. In fact, I will probably be using it more heavily for the rest of the installation, because I've got one of the most difficult pieces here, 0 bubbles. And it's adhering very nicely. Okay, I've reached the halfway point on my decal install. Everything is done on the left side of the bike, as well as the front fender and then the tail as well. Right, here we are starting on the left-hand side of the bike. The graphics do wrap all the way back to the tail section here. This is no personalization back here on the tail. As we come along, the graphics were supposed to come all the way here, and I'm missing this one little piece. Unfortunately, I believe that something just got left on the cutting floor somewhere in Spain, so I'm going to be working with those guys to get that piece. But of all the pieces that were missing, it was just this little tiny one right here, which we can see on the other side of the motorcycle. When it's properly installed, that decal flows all the way back across those segments, which I think looks really nice. As you'd also seen in the video, if you watch the entire thing, you can see it has that diamond or 3-blade propeller design that's embossed into the plastic. The decals did a really good job of just applying quite a bit of heat and adhering to those surfaces. But you can see that how it kind of pops up through the decal. Swing arms on both sides. Those were actually a little bit more difficult than they looked. Lower gas tank frame, rear shroud, nice difficult piece that wraps around all the way around the gas tank here. And then 2 separate pieces, top and bottom. We've got my personalization, Morso di Serpente, snake bite in Italian. Nice application. It came out really good. If I hadn't decided to switch over to the wet method, I think I probably would have gotten a different result. The front fender was one that I had applied using just being completely dry, and that was the one place where I don't know if I can even see it anymore. Not really. I had a small bubble that I'd worked out in this valley right here on the fender. I think it came out pretty good. There were some pieces that were supposed to wrap all the way around the red beak. It was going to take some of that red off, and it was going to put a red Aprilia right back here behind where the guard was. So that was kind of useless to me. And also up here on the tank, it was going to have a gas and roll sticker and another Aprilia Tuareg 660 and some other pieces. This one was actually broken up into several pieces. So this one actually would have been fairly easy to install, but I really wanted to keep my 54 world titles. And most of the time, honestly, As you can see, I've got my buckles down here and my buckles up here. This is going to be hiding underneath a gas tank bag. So I've got a Moskomoto Gnome tank bag that I put on top of there. But just came out really, really nice. Got some the Italian flag colors back here. A little bit of gas and roll of their own branding here for the decal company. But I really like the three-dimensional look. I like the geo mapping on the sides. I like this, how it looks like now there's several levels to the radiator shroud. How the A kind of tucks underneath the decal, the gray part right here. So it just gives it more depth altogether. Just makes it really pop. I hope you agree. I'm very, very happy with it. Of course, this is a highly personal thing, putting graphics on your motorcycle and making it yours. But this one has certainly become a passion project for me, and hope that you folks enjoy the way it looks.